Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, How to Achieve Real-Time Anonymized Data, presented by Joost Jongman, Chapter Lead DATPROF and Parasoft at Valori. My name is Chantal Wouters, and I will be the moderator during this webinar. If you have any questions for Joost during this webinar, please post them in the Q&A, and we'll try to address them after the presentation. And now is the moment. I would like to hand over the microphone to Joost, and he will take you through his presentation.
Well, thank you, Chantal, for this wonderful introduction. And of course, for this time slot, in order to talk about the real-time test data anonymizing. Before I start, a short introduction on who I am. Well, as Chantal said, I'm Joost Jongman, Chapter Lead Parasoft DATPROF, from within the company Valori. Well, we have a strong belief in these two tool sets, and that's why we came up with this particular solution on which we will elaborate more later on. So for today, what we're going to discuss is a short, and I promise it will be a real short introduction to Valori, so that you know where we come from, what our point of view is. Then we will elaborate more on the problems and of course on the solution, what we have for that. And then the last part, which is the most wonderful part, which is the live demo, in which you can see the actual solution running and working. Valori, as the slide says, we're a full service test company. So we do everything which is related to testing. And in order to do this correctly, we have adopted the new way of working with tribes. Within the full testing tribe, and within this tribe we have several chapters, specific areas where we have specialists who are focused on particular technologies, tool sets or mindsets. Related to myself, I'm chapter lead of Parasoft and DATPROF, which are tools which we will use as well during this live demo. And our main vision is to create those short feedback loops in order to give developers and the team, which we are part of course, the feedback early on. So don't wait until it's almost ready for production and then start shouting something is wrong. No, we want to do that as early as possible and to make sure that we have the best time to market, of course, with the quality that is needed for the solutions that we are creating. And as promised, I'll keep it short. So that is everything about Valori, which is relevant for right now. The challenges. As I said, we are in the field. We work for clients. We do lots of work related to test automation. We do service virtualization, we have test data management, test management, agile testing, everything which is related to testing. And what we see right now, at least within the EU, is that GDPR is a real case. We can't just copy production data anymore towards the non-production environments. So our best data can't be used from that point of view anymore. So yeah, it's not something which is new. Of course, GDPR is pretty new, but before we had other regulations which were prohibiting us, but we didn't take too much notice. And we see that with the coming of GDPR, companies are really investing in this part. So the production data, which we can't use anymore, is a real challenge. Furthermore, there are more companies and everybody is investing in working in a smarter way. So it has to be faster, it has to be with a high quality or anything like that. And one point for that point of view is working agile. It's not completely new for those who know agile, but agile really sets some new challenges compared to the old waterfall projects. And one of it is setting up correct environments without interfering with the other teams and making sure that we get the results as fast as we really wanted without losing anything to quality. And yes, it's a real big challenge in order to set this up correctly. Related to the non-production environments, we also could see that there's lots of issues with the data. And because we are no longer allowed to use the production data, we create and we generate test data, or we have some old copies, or we use old bandwidth, or we use data which already has been gone through some processes. So in order that we use that kind of information, we see a lot of test cases fail because of the data instead of because of the functionalities. And data could have been corrupted or could have been renewed, which isn't the case in production. So there are a lot of issues related to data which give you false positives related to quality issues. So yeah, it's nothing new, and I hope that you guys and girls are aware of these challenges and that you run into the same, because it's one of the aspects which drove us to this particular solution. Continuing with the challenge, I have here some application landscape of the IT organization. I don't say that this is everywhere exactly the same. Every organization has its own complex and difficult environment. And we combined several technologies. Everything is talking to each other on different API. We use different languages in order to create code. We have some mainframe applications, maybe with the new front ends, which are in the language which are just 2 years old. How do we connect everything? How do we sync everything? And how do we create the entire chain on the moment that we want to test or create some new functionalities? So yeah, modern IT applications require new thoughts on how to set up the entire environment and how to stay ahead of the competition and don't lose anything towards the quality. Well, if I simplify the IT landscape, IT applications, we have our own application, which from now on I will call System Under Test, or SUT, if I abbreviate it. Our own application in production uses production data, of course, having stored its own data. And my application can be invoked either by a client who's a real client using the GUI, or is being triggered by some process from a related system, which is sending an API call or running a patch or anything like that. But that related system has its own production data as well. Even in this simplified landscape, we see that our application is sending something to another application further up in the chain. And that system obviously has its own production data as well. What we see at our clients in the new way of working, or even in the older way of working, is that a lot of these systems or databases are not available during the development phase. It's too costly to set up entire environments, having all the applications running just in the same set that we want to have it at the time that we want to go to production without change. And of course, as I just said, the production data is no longer allowed, not for the other applications, nor for our own system under test. So yeah, data is not available, or it's in an incorrect state, so we don't know the actual value of our testing purposes. So this is a real challenge that we see all over the place. And we want to have a solution for that. And with the current tool sets, we have some solutions, and I will go through them. These solutions are basically part of just one of the key points where the problem is. It doesn't solve the entire problem, it solves just a part of the problem. If we look it up from a test automation approach, we see that instead of using the actual applications which are in the chain, we use, for example, Parasoft SOA test to simulate the consumer or the customer. We invoke a web service or we invoke the GUI in order to get a process going, which invokes our system in a test, which starts the actual process that we want. And of course, instead of having the actual backends, we can simulate those backends using Parasoft Virtualize in order to create virtual assets which pretend and behave exactly the same as the backend, but then smaller without having the reliability issues of the other applications. But as we can see, if we take this approach, we're just taking a part of the problem. We only take the upper half, and we are still depending on production data, or at least data within the environment. So we still need data for SOA test in this case in order to run the test suites. And our own application, our system and test needs the data, as well does Virtualize need it in order to have it there. And what we didn't draw in this picture is that those data have to be in sync as well. So yeah, as I said, it's only solving a part of that problem that we face at our clients. Well, if we go and look at the DATPROF solution, we can see that the upper part is still there. So we are still depending on the related system on the front or the real client. Our own application is using the data, and the backend is still really there. In this case, instead of using the production data, we used the DATPROF tooling subset and privacy in order to create a subsetted set of test data, which we can mask or anonymize in order to recreate the production data, which is no longer production data. So it has all the valuables and all the necessary cases in there without having the actual production data. So all our cases are there, but it can't be related to any person anymore. But as I said, it's only a part of the solution, since this one is only handling the lower part of the environment, so to say. And we want to have a solution for the complete problem, because we can combine these two solutions, but it means that we have to indicate two processes which we have to adjust to each other and which we have to maintain separately, and which are probably sent to different parts of the chain as well. Different people are working on masking or subsetting the data related to creating the test cases. So they have to get in sync as well. And a lot of problems start from the communicating part between those teams. So instead of having an environment which is really dedicated for you, you have two solutions, which are wonderful solutions, but which are only addressing a part of the problem instead of the complete problem together. So what we want is a combination of test automation and test data management in order to simulate the consumers, to simulate the producers, so the backend and the front ends, and the other related systems can be stored inside the Parasoft solution. And we use DATPROF in order to create the subset of test data, which is anonymized and which is completely in sync and adhered into the test suite or the virtual assets. In this case, you get a solution which is taking care of and the applications and of the data. So you have a complete environment in which you are in control of what is happening. Are there any questions so far related to this part of the concept? And Chantal, I need your help in this.
Yes. No, there are no questions so far. There was one statement which was made by Herman. Production data are not necessarily good test data, which is true, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
True. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Then it's almost demo time, because before we go to the demo, I will show you the applications that we will use so that you don't have to learn the applications during the demo and have to understand what is happening at the very same time. So first I will start with the system under test. The system under test is Guessr. That's a demo application from DATPROF. And in here, as you can see, we have customers, we have locations, we have products, suppliers. There's a lot of data in here in different GUIs which can be used. And to keep it pretty simple during the demo, we said, okay, we have had an issue in the previous release with our application that the count of the number of clients or customers is incorrect, and the new release should be sufficient. So we have a test that goes to or logs into the application, goes to the customer tab, search for a particular last name from a particular customer or customer set, and it should result in the correct number of clients which we have. And that is the test case. So we, at the bottom of the screen, which I can't show since this is just a screenshot, but at the bottom of this screen, we have a count, and it says, okay, I found this many records. And of course, in the test, we will go and look for that number of records as well in the database, and we will match those two numbers. And it should be the very same. If it's not, then it should fail. So that's what we have as the system under test, and a simple test suite in order to make it understandable what we're doing. The test itself is being triggered or being executed by Parasoft SOA test, but we use the Parasoft continuous testing platform environment manager in order to run the actual test suite. So this is how Parasoft environment manager will look like. And in here you can see that we have a particular server, and in there we have the search customer test suite, and we can execute that particular test. And once I will do that during the live demo, I will move over pretty fast towards the DATPROF tooling, the DATPROF Runtime environment, which is pretty similar to the Parasoft continuous testing platform. This is as well a platform in which we can run DATPROF privacy or DATPROF subset scripts that has been created up front. And in here we have a particular script that is running the anonymization of the data. So, and then once we will go through the demo, I will start explaining more on what is happening and how it's happening. So during the demonstration, as said, I will start with the Parasoft environment manager or the continuous testing platform, and it will start a test which will run automatically to Guessr. And in the meantime, Parasoft SOA test will invoke DATPROF Runtime in order to start the anonymization process, in order to get masked test data or anonymized test data. And until it's finished, Parasoft SOA test doesn't do anything, and only once it's done, it will start running the actual test. So this is what we will start to see during the demo. First, I will log on to the demo application, the system under test. Guessr will be our system under test. In here we will have the customers, and as we have discussed, we have the test case in order to look for a particular customer, and then once we have applied this filter, we will make a count on the number of records that will be shown. That particular count is at the bottom of the page. The number applied over here will be verified against the database in the test. So right now, without applying a filter, we have pretty high number. In our test case, we will select a particular last name, which will have a filter in order to achieve less numbers. In a previous release, we have seen an issue with this, that the count wasn't correct. So the total was showing a different number than the amount of records that is actually shown on the screen. In this latest release, this should have been fixed. So we have a test case which will apply this for us. This test case will be run through SOA test. And in order to make life more easy, we use Environment Manager from the Parasoft continuous testing platform. In here, we have API testing. API testing will start the execution of the test for us once we will click it manually to start right now. Here we have our test case, search customers. In a demo, I will start executing the actual test, but I won't do that yet until I've shown everything for you. Right now we have this test case, and I won't bother right now for more information. This test case uses the data which is available during or in the environment. The data right now is actual production data, so we can't use it. So what we did is we have a particular tool, DATPROF, and we have DATPROF Runtime, and we'll log in here. And DATPROF Runtime will be invoked during the test execution in order to anonymize the data inside the database while running the test. So we have here a particular job, which is remote gas work, where we will anonymize the data. And we will see that once I trigger the test in API testing, the search customer will invoke DATPROF Runtime in order to anonymize the data. So I go back to Environment Manager. I already selected the search customer and I just click execute. This is starting the test as it is right now. So I don't have to change environments or select data. It just starts running the test. If I go back to DATPROF Runtime, we will see in a few seconds that it will be starting a particular run for the anonymization of the data inside the database. I clicked it to open it and we can see the progress bar moving, which means that it is doing the anonymization of the test data. Right now, the anonymization is pretty simple. It's just shuffling the last names of the customers. So for instance, that a person was called Young. After the shuffle, this person won't have the last name Young anymore. It will be Bowles, for instance, and Bowles will be Young. In order to achieve a real demo for this, and we made it pretty simple in order to just show that we can do it. Of course, when you want to be GDPR compliant, you have to do more than just shuffle the last names. It will be more, but that depends on what data you are using for what purpose and so on. Right now, DATPROF Runtime is running the DATPROF privacy script. So DATPROF privacy is the actual script which is being executed right now below the surface. We can see the progress in here. While it's running, it's doing its job. In the meantime, I will go back to the test scenario because this one won't take that much longer, so I can talk us through the test scenario itself. And we can already see it has been finished. So the database is already anonymized during the test. What we did in the test is we made a few steps. So we have the test suite, search customer. In there we have some data. We have an environment settings, what environment are we testing against, what data do we want to use. So that's basically the setup of the test. And before executing the actual test, we have a particular flow which we have created, the setup of the anonymized test data. This is a script which is invoking the DATPROF Runtime API. It's making the call, okay, I want you to start this test script, or this anonymization script, I should say. So it starts the script, and as we just seen, DATPROF Runtime will start with the anonymization, but we don't want to start our test yet, because at the time that we are starting to do the anonymization, we can't use the data yet. So we triggered the script in order to anonymize, and now we have to wait. In our case, we said, okay, we don't want to wait too long. As in, if the anonymization takes longer than 5 minutes, the test should fail. Because if it's taking more than 5 minutes, there is something wrong. The database is not available, the infrastructure has an issue, and the data definition has been changed. Could be anything, but at least we don't have to wait that much longer because something is wrong. So if it's taking more than 5 minutes, it should fail. So what did we do? Inside this folder, we have this API call in order to start the script, which is here, prepare the test data management. And then we have another folder, is the data prepared? So it's invoking runtime. How are you doing with this job, which I just gave you? Are you done? Are you in a particular state? If you are in a particular state which is error, I can cancel because my data is not production or isn't anonymized from production, so I can't use it. Something else is wrong, so I have to investigate that first. So this is looping until the anonymization has been done successfully, or it reached another end state which is not correct. Only once we receive the message from runtime in the reply saying, okay, I'm done, I'm finished, I'm ready, we will go on and go to the functional web test. A functional web test is basically what I just showed you. Okay, we log on to the Guessware application. Once we logged on to the Guessware application, we go to the customer. We fill in the parameterized last name and the name that we want to look up. And we go to the bottom of the screen and we capture and store the amount of records which has been shown for that particular last name. So that's the test that we want to do, or at least that's the actions that we want to do. Now we want to verify if this has been run successful. So that's the last part of this script, and we have run DB validation. In there, we do a query on the database where we execute a particular select statement. It's a pretty simple select statement for this demo. It says, give me the count of all the customers having this particular last name. And the last name, of course, is in sync with the last name that we have used during the functional web test. Again, that count should return us with a particular number. And that number has to be exactly the same as the amount which has been shown during the functional web test. If it's the same, test was succeeded and the new release is successful. If not, we have an issue and we have to verify that one. So we have this test right now, and we are able to run this test against the anonymized test data. And in order to achieve this, you have to think of a proper solution as well in order to reach this. This means that you have to dynamically create your test data. So you can't select Mr. Young every time, because Mr. Young will have 3 records in the first run, and in the next run, after another shuffle, it could have been 88. So you have to be able to select the test case which is sufficient for the test case that you want to execute. And apart from that, you have to work with parameters during your test case because it can't be hard-coded anymore. Because since you're working with the data and the data changes and is dynamic, so to say, you have to work with dynamic values as well. So store it in the parameters and use it like that. This will help you to create data during a test run that you want to execute. And right now, for testing purposes, we created it while having an always available database. It's really applicable in solutions where you have an environment which you will create and deploy at the time that a developer has changed the code. So the developer checks in his code. The continuous delivery pipeline starts building the software. Once it's done building the software, it will create the environment, as in making sure that there is a machine available or a server available, install the software, bring it up and running, make sure that the database is available, that the database and the system on the test can communicate with each other. And then at the time that everything is ready as well, it will invoke the test during an API call to Environment Manager in order to start, in this case, the Search Customer Test Suite, which will use the application, which has been just deployed, but also, and in our case, copy the data from an environment into the temporary database and then mask it, and then we can execute the test. Once everything is successful, we can destroy the environment afterwards and save us a lot of costs for not maintaining all those environments and not storing all that data inside Docker containers and so on. It will really help us in getting a short time to market, have less costs for maintaining environments, maintaining and storing data, and of course it brings us a lot of quality, because right now we know that we are working with correct data, because data from production mostly is really useful and really good data in order to test with. Of course, there are some solutions that you have to extend it a bit. We don't go into detail for that one right now, but of course that can be achieved using DATPROF as well. But in here you get a powerful solution in order to create data at runtime, which is applicable and applies to regulations while using the Powerfull tooling for testing as well. So you get a complete solution for the entire problem where the strengths of the tools have been combined. What I wanted to explain more closely and more narrowly after the demo is more of how is everything connected to each other and how is everything inside the chain, and what does it really add for value, because I can understand that in an older approach in which we have complete environments, this may not be the case. So for now, we said, okay, the trigger or the initial start, although it's a manual start, is the continuous testing platform on which we trigger a test suite. So at the time that we clicked on execute, we sent a message from the continuous testing platform towards the SOA test server. The SOA test server gained the API call and knows, okay, I have to start this test. And this test, which is the test suite, of course, we made it this smart that it's being able to call DATPROF Runtime at that very moment. So we can start the anonymization process of our data. And for this demo, of course, we try to keep it small and just do the anonymization, but it could have been a subset call first and then a privacy call later in order to get first a subset of the production dump and then later run the masking rules on the last part in order to be fully compliant. This is just a trigger in order to start the process, but then we need Parasoft SOA test to wait until that part of the process is done. So while runtime is masking the data in the database, SOA test is invoking runtime. How is this particular job going? and we know which job we just started, so we can invoke the runtime. Okay, are you done? Are you in an error? Are you finished? And of course, if it's not finished in time or it's finished but with an error, then we don't have to start our test, because then we have probably corrupt data or some other issues which will result into false positives. Assuming that the script in runtime runs successfully, we can then start our test from Parasoft SOA test to the system under test. So SOA test starts invoking the application. And in this case, what we did is we didn't copy just the data from production to a subset which we mask and which we have for just SOA test and runtime, but we actually mask the data from the application which is running in there. So it's a real-time anonymization of the data which is being used in the application. So if we run the script, it's using that new set of data. So that is what we can see in here. As I said, just seeing this part of the picture, it may conclude that it's not a real benefit, since we can say, okay, but what if we create an environment in which we have the application always running, in which we have a dedicated environment which we populate with masked and subsetted data? Wouldn't be that sufficient? Well, what we see nowadays with the new layers of continuous delivery and containerization and automated building environments is that the database and applications are being created at the time that we want to check this new part of the functionality. So we start by having a commit from a developer which says, okay, I'm done with the new change and I want to create this environment. And at that time, the continuous delivery pipeline starts the new application on a new virtual machine or a cloud machine and just start, okay, application is there. But in order to have the application running successfully, we need a database as well. So we create an empty database because that saves us a lot of space, which will be beneficial for our costs. And at the time that we have the application and we have the database and they know how to communicate with each other, we can start the part of the testing, which will be an automated call, an API call towards the Parasoft continuous testing platform, saying, okay, this is the application that we just created. That means that we have to run this set of tests. And in order to run that, the continuous testing platform sends the message to Parasoft SOA test and basically this picture. And then in the very same process, DATPROF Runtime is able to populate that newly created database as well. And SOA test is able to read the data from that database and to test against the application. So you can really create an environment at the time that you want it, completely separated from all the other dependencies within the chain, with your own data, which can't be used by anyone else. And if the test runs successfully, so everything runs fine and there are no issues, you can destroy the environment right away as well. So you don't have to save up memory or CPUs or data or storage and anything like that. So you just recreate it at the time that you want to do a new test. And this can be done in just a few minutes, setting up this entire environment. Of course, and not with every aspect. If you have a mainframe, it will be a bit harder, but there are a lot of new technologies in which we can use this approach in order to create the real create, deploy, and destroy thought of the environments. So you will be in full control of everything that you have. And that's a real benefit, in my opinion, and that's what we see with our customers as well. And being able to create it at runtime, being completely separated from the other teams and completely in control of everything that is happening, and we get the best results in order to get a high quality of the code and the product, have a shorter time to market, and have everybody happy and ready for the next challenges that we face.
So one of the questions was, how would you handle the anonymization of the data in the backend systems using your mechanism? So have you experienced anything like that?
Yeah, well, we have several times. Basically, if we take a look on the slide which is presented right now with the takeaway, instead of using this setup, I could have drawn more applications next to each other which are talking with each other. So and let's assume that there's another backend which you want to virtualize. So instead of using the actual backend and having to create it as well during the create and deploy, instead of creating that actual backend, we create a virtual asset, which we have created using Parasoft Virtualize. And Parasoft Virtualize, and those virtual assets can be started throughout an API call as well. And at the time that we start that call, and the virtual asset itself will make a request to the database, okay, give me all the entries that I need, or it does it at runtime, depending on the solution that you have taken, so to say. And then at the time that you run your test against the system under test, and instead of going to the actual backend, you go to the virtual asset, which is having the very same data as that you have just anonymized, and which is available, so to say, throughout the chain. Does that answer the question?
I see a raised hand, so I believe it has answered the question. Okay, I see some other participants have just raised their hands. I'm not sure whether there are any more questions at this current moment. The Q&A is further empty and the questions were answered. Thank you very much, Joost, for your time. And if participants have questions for you directly in your experience with DATPROF and with Parasoft, I'm sure they can contact you directly. You're available via LinkedIn, right? Also to possibly connect.
Absolutely. I'm there on LinkedIn, so just send me an invite and I'll get back to the questions that you have. And if not, you can contact me as well by email or by phone.
So thank you again, and I'm wishing you all a great day.